They say family is supposed to be your greatest support system, the people who uplift you when the world tears you down. But what happens when the ones you trust the most become the very source of your deepest pain? When their words, their actions, their judgments shatter everything you hold dear? This is my story, a story of betrayal, humiliation, and ultimately, justice. It all started the day my parents decided that my son, my innocent, kind-hearted boy, wasn't good enough in their eyes. They mocked him, belittled him, treated him like he was an embarrassment to the family name. But they had no idea that life has a way of making people answer for their actions. And when karma came knocking, it hit them harder than they could have ever imagined. I've noticed only 98% of you who watch haven't subscribed. Come on, guys, show some love and support. Thanks a bunch to those who have already subscribed. For as long as I can remember, my parents held me to impossibly high standards. They weren't just strict, they were obsessed with appearances. Every decision I made, every choice, every achievement was weighed not by its impact on my happiness, but by how it made them look to the outside world. When I had my son, Liam, I vowed to break that cycle. I wanted him to grow up knowing that he was loved unconditionally, not just when he was perfect in someone else's eyes, but for who he truly was. But my parents? They didn't see it that way. At first, they acted excited about having a grandson. They showered him with gifts when he was little, put on smiles at family gatherings. But as Liam grew older, their true feelings started to show. Liam wasn't the golden child they had imagined. He wasn't obsessed with grades or following a traditional path. He was creative, sensitive, and loved music more than anything in the world. Instead of playing sports or excelling in math like they expected, he spent hours composing songs, writing lyrics, and dreaming of becoming a musician. To me, he was extraordinary. To them, he was a disappointment. The breaking point came at a family dinner, a night that started as a simple gathering but turned into a nightmare. My parents, sitting at the head of the table like they were royalty, decided it was time to voice their concerns about Liam's future. "Enough is enough," my father scoffed, swirling his glass of wine. "You need to stop entertaining his nonsense. Music isn't a career, it's a hobby. He needs discipline, not dreams." My mother chimed in with a laugh. "Exactly. Can you imagine? A musician in this family? What will people say?" Liam sat there silent, his hands clenched into fists in his lap. I could see it in his eyes, the pain, the shame, the feeling of being worthless. But before I could defend him, my father turned to him directly. "You'll never make it, boy. The world chews up kids like you and spits them out. If you don't get your act together, you'll end up a nobody. Is that what you want?" The room fell silent. My son, the boy I had raised with so much love, had just been humiliated in front of the entire family. He pushed his chair back and left the table. I followed, my heart pounding. But when I reached his room, he simply looked at me and said, "Mom, I get it now. I'll never be enough for them." That broke me. From that night on, Liam changed. He withdrew, spending hours alone in his room, barely speaking. The spark in his eyes dimmed, and I was furious. I confronted my parents, hoping they'd realize the damage they had done. But all I got in return was cold indifference. "We're just being honest," my mother said with a shrug. "It's for his own good." That's when I made a decision. If they couldn't respect my son, they didn't deserve to be part of his life. I cut them off completely. No more visits, no more calls. If they wanted to belittle him, they could do it from a distance. At first, they thought I was bluffing. They assumed I'd come crawling back. But weeks turned into months, and I stood my ground. Then, karma struck. My parents, so obsessed with their image, soon found themselves on the receiving end of the same humiliation they had inflicted. My father, who had built his reputation on being a man of wisdom and leadership, was exposed for unethical business practices. His company took a hit, and suddenly the same people who once admired him were turning their backs. My mother, who had prided herself on social status, found herself isolated. Friends distanced themselves, and the very community she cared so much about no longer welcomed her with open arms. And the worst part, they had lost their family. They reached out, desperate to reconcile, but it was too late. Liam had moved on, stronger than ever. He had taken their cruelty and turned it into fuel. He poured his pain into his music, and guess what? People listened. His songs resonated with thousands, then millions. The very dream they mocked him for became his reality. One day I received a call from my mother. Her voice was quieter than I had ever heard it. "We were wrong," she admitted. "We see that now. But some wounds, though forgiven, never fully heal." I allowed them to apologize, but I made it clear, Liam owed them nothing. He had built himself up from the pain they caused, and he was shining without their approval. To this day, my parents live with the weight of what they did. They paid the price for their arrogance, their cruelty, their obsession with image. And Liam? He thrived. Family is supposed to be a source of love, not judgment. And when they fail in that role, sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away. If you've ever faced a situation where someone tried to tear you down, where those who should have lifted you up instead made you feel small, know this. Their words do not define you. Your worth is not determined by their expectations. And sometimes the best revenge is simply proving them wrong. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment sharing your thoughts. Have you ever faced something similar? Let's talk about it in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. Thank you for watching, and remember, you are more than enough.